And here's your host, Goody.
Welcome everybody to the Gabbin with Goody podcast. I'm your host, Goody. Today, special guest, good friend, fellow firefighter, Bill. Thank you for opening up your house to us today for episode 4 of the podcast. Why don't you introduce yourself a little bit?
Okay, thanks for having me. My name's Bill. I work with Andy. I'm a captain at the fire department. He's actually on my crew, so I've gotten to know him. I worked with him as a private, and then once I became a captain, he got assigned to my crew, which is cool. Introducing myself a little bit. I'm the oldest of 3 kids. Still close with my folks. Grew up in a small town not far from where I work. I didn't always want to be a firefighter. Didn't know what I wanted to do. Basically, just joined the volunteer fire department because I saw a backdraft, and I'm like, man, that was fun. So I joined the volunteer fire department at 17. I had to have my parents sign a permission slip, and I actually had a. You want me to stop him?
It's all right. He's gonna come through. That's fine.
Yeah, right. I have a 3-legged dog that's hopscotching along here.
It's all good.
But so I had my parents sign a permission slip so I could get on the fire department and see what that was like. At least I always thought it was a cool story. How I got my start in the fire department is I was at a school dance, because there's still such thing back then at a church, and I had the pager on. And sure enough, they toned out for an all-call fire, which I had no idea what the heck the thing was even doing when it was beeping. But I figured I'd go down to the fire department, and somehow I got on a truck with my gear. Again, this gear was issued to me. I didn't know how to wear any of it, so I threw my long coat and the roll-up boots on, and we ended up going to a fire that was a sheet metal factory fire. Didn't know what I was doing, so I joined these guys on this line. They had Scott packs on and everything. I'm this 17-year-old kid, acne all over my face, and they're like, what in the heck is this kid doing? So I introduced myself. The next thing you know, the chief looks over, he sees a kid on the line. He's like, what the hell is he doing here? So he calls me over. He's like, hey, your name's Bill, right? I'm like, yeah. He's like, your permission slip signed? I'm like, yeah, you'll have it on Monday, chief. He's like, all right, get back on there. And sure enough, not knowing any better, I didn't know how to wear the gear. I took a bunch of smoke, couldn't speak for 3 days, but I thought I was a cat's ass because of it. But in hindsight, it probably weren't the best idea. But that got me my start in the fire department. Still didn't know if I wanted to do that full time. Loved being a volunteer, but I didn't know if it was really my career path. Which is tough. As a senior in high school, you're expected to know exactly what you want to do. Like, there's all that pressure. You gotta go to school. You gotta figure it out. I told my daughter I was absolutely that kid that didn't know what he wanted to do. I wasn't this kid that at kindergarten wanted to be a firefighter. That's not the way it works. You know, I wanted to be an astronaut, a doctor, a vet. I mean, there's a million things I wanted to do before I landed into this. In fact, as a senior, I thought long and hard about actually becoming a priest and going into seminary school. But the politics of the church didn't seem to align with my view of just being in church and helping people and giving of yourself and just that selfless sacrifice thing, which I've always had in my heart to be that giving person. I didn't really think that the politics would align with what I envisioned I would want to do with that. So I put a pin in that, and went to Holyoke Community College to kind of figure out what I wanted to do. Took a liberal arts path, because I figured an education is a good start. While I was there, I even took I don't even know what it's called. It's a test that you take, and it gives you different things that you might want to do for a career. Like, it asks you, it's like a personality test or something like that. Yeah. And I think it had me down as an entrepreneur, maybe a history teacher, or something else. Firefighter wasn't one of them. Mm-hmm. But while I was going to Holyoke, I was still very active being a volunteer on the fire department. And one day there was an accident. It was a semi truck that crashed on the pike. The light flight actually came out, landed on the highway, and up to this point, I really didn't have any knowledge of EMS or paramedics or any of that stuff. But watching these guys work on this guy as we were trying to get him out, and of course there's old school. We were rolling the dash with the old chains and stuff that's not done now, but which is cool to see all that stuff back then. But I saw them work on this guy. I'm like, holy crap, that's pretty cool. And I started giving it more thought that maybe I do want to try to be on a fire department full time. So I started looking into that because it's really hard to know the path to becoming a firefighter. That's why when I have kids in high school or something, somebody says they want to be a firefighter, I always tell them, like, stop by the fire station. It's not like any other job. You just throw an application in. There's a whole trajectory you have to hit right, or steps, in order to become a firefighter. And we have a kid on the job now, you and I work with. He called me up as a freshman in high school, and he's like, hey man, I'm thinking about being a firefighter. I'm like, well, this is what you need to do, and now you and I work with that guy.
Yeah.
But so anyway, I decided I wanted to be a firefighter. I knew the only way to do that, because through my research, is becoming a paramedic. So I went to Springfield College for 2 more years and got my bachelor's degree in EMS management.
Yeah.
And from there, I worked at a private service as a paramedic on overnights in a city, and it was fun. I got a lot of experience real quick. Being from a small town and working in a city, my folks are scared as shit for me.
Yeah.
They want to buy me a bulletproof vest and all this crazy stuff, and I'm like, no, I'm just hoping.
That was probably even before it was that bad.
Yeah. I'm like, yeah, oh, now it's terrible.
Now it's terrible.
Yeah, now it's a war zone. But I'm like, no, I'm not gonna wear a bulletproof vest. We're not doing this. But yeah, I mean, I was young as far as getting into EMS, because I was so young they wouldn't even hire me at this place in the city because I wasn't 21 yet.
Yeah.
My first ambulance call ever was me doing my intermediate ride time with the fire department. Like, I was too young I got my EMT, and I was riding to get my intermediate certification when I did my first ambulance call ever, because I was too young to even work as an EMT. And it was a terrible accident. You know, like, I started off with a bang. Thankfully, the rest of my career has gone pretty smooth.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got my medic, and then I got on the fire department. And I've been on the fire department I'm on now for 25 years. It just turned 25 years in July.
25 years.
I've been 16 years as a private, and the last 9 as a captain. So it's been a good career so far.
Yeah, he does a pretty good job. He's all right.
I try like hell.
Yeah, he knows what he's doing for the most part, I think. You know?
Yeah, I really believe that, you know, I mean, everyone differs on the whole leadership thing. Like, my biggest issue with people with leadership is everyone likes to talk about the bumper sticker, lead by example, and all these other horseshit sayings. But not a lot of people actually do that, and that's honestly too bad. Like, I always thought when I became a captain, the onus is on me to actually do more. Like, you don't do less because, oh my God, I got to the top, now I can just stop. Like, as soon as I became a captain, I'm like, holy shit, now I don't know anything. Like, I have this whole skill set as a private, but now I need to really get my crap together, because now I got 7 lives that I owe this to them to know my stuff. And so I just kept going to fire academy classes, and I would bring it back to the troops. But I don't believe they work for me. I think I work for them and support what they're doing out there. And I've always taken that to heart. Like I do, like, I don't like those bumper stickers, but I try to lead. I absolutely try to lead by example. I think it's important. I don't think leadership should be taken for granted if you're given that opportunity. And I really, really pride myself, and I hope that people believe me when they know that they mean something to me, and I take it to heart. I don't just show up to work like, whatever. These guys matter to me, and I actually give them everything I have, you know. And I think that's important for a leader. Otherwise, don't do it, man.
Yeah, I think there's a good point there that Bill makes is it's important. I mean, as a private, to me, it's important for the leader of the group to, like, for me to look over at him and be like, you know, he's not asking me to do something that he wouldn't do. And I think that's a very telling trait that you would think a lot of leaders would have. but it's not as common as people would think. Like Bill said, there are a lot of people out here that get that job, and then they're like, hey, I don't have to do anything else. I can just skate by being the captain, the whatever, being the officer. And Bill is one of those guys who's willing to go out of his way and do that extra step, like he said. And I think that is, to me, it's important, and it is a very big trait for me as a private, for my leader to have. Whether it's the captain, lieutenant, the chief, I want to know that I can, like, if I'm in a bind and I need that extra set of hands, or if I need to be like, hey, I need help, and it's not just, hey, drive the ambulance, it's, hey, get in the back, and do some skills. It's important for me to have that person, and Bill is that guy, always, trying to step up to the ambulance when he can. It may ruffle a few feathers, but he does a good job, and he is what I like to call sometimes the people's captain. He will go to the bat for you and obviously if you're wrong, that's on you, but if you're not, and he thinks that there's a fight to be had, Bill's there, and we do appreciate that on our crew. So back in the 90s, you started this all off. Yep. Right? So you're all in there in the 90s. You've seen a lot of changes through the department, whether it's technology-wise or the type of people who come through the door. What are some of the biggest changes that you've seen in the fire department in your illustrious career?
There's a couple big changes that I really think were game changers, right? The gear got safer, but something that we didn't anticipate, I'll say, and it's made our job predominantly harder, is the fact that these houses are built differently now. Like they're tighter because of everyone, cost savings and whatnot, but they're tighter and they're all plastics and lightweight material. So unfortunately, they flash over quicker and they fail quicker, which makes it more dangerous for us. So the job's changed in that regard. But I even go back to where just our tactics have changed so much. Without getting crazy with it, we used to show up, especially on this town I was at, and you'd show up and you knock every damn window out of that building because you'd have to vent. And you'd knock every window out, and then the thing would take off and burn to the ground, and you thought you were doing something. Like, that's literally how a lot of the fire departments operated. They opened these houses up in order to let the fire out. Well, all it did was free burn and burn these houses down much, much quicker. Now we know better than that through different tests that they've run, and now we don't do that. We don't bust windows open. We actually go in and only open windows we need to open so we can put the fire out. That's changed like crazy how we do it. So that's how the job's changed a little bit on that respect. I think the hardest thing for me, as far as the job changes, and my wife talks about this too. My wife was a volunteer in a different town before she got on the fire department where we work for. We're both firefighters in the same place. We do not work together. That doesn't work out well sometimes. We love each other dearly, but sometimes on the ambulance there can be some headbutting going on. But we've talked about this, and there's definitely a paradigm shift, I would say, in some of the people coming in. Like for us, the fire department always meant so much. Like we were volunteers. I wore all the blue shirts with the fight what you fear and all the crazy stuff. Yeah. And once you got on the job full time, it did change a little bit. It almost became more of a job and less of a passion. And that's not to say I don't put passion into it, but it almost took some of the mystique and magic out of it for me. And unfortunately, some of the kids coming in now, although they're great at their job, I mean, these are educated, they're healthy, fit, like they do their job well. But I almost think the fire department is more of a job to them and less of a calling. And for me, once I decided that this was truly what I wanted to do, I gave my heart and soul into it. I still do. I've taken chances that I probably shouldn't take. I've put myself at personal risk where I've been in a hospital, hospitalized in a Johnny putting a fire out and in the hospital. I mean, I put myself at personal risk because I care about the job and care about the people. And sometimes I think the work ethic and the amount that it matters, you're not working at Walmart. No offense to people working at Walmart. This is people's lives, and this is important, you know. And I'll always be thankful that I have had that old school, like, you know, it's a calling thing versus today's firefighter. I'm glad I got to see that trajectory. I'm not thrilled where it's going because I think I would like to see guys more care about the job a little more.
Yeah.
They do the job awesome, don't get me wrong, but I'd like to see the heart more in it, you know, and show up more off duty to help out. I'd like more family, but that again, that's society pulls guys in a million directions. It's societal.
It is, and I would say that I would agree with you. As a young kid, you know, my grandfather was on the fire department that we're on, and even though he retired, like when I was young, there was still, like, he was still very active in, like, you know, being there at like social club events, being there for like the fire department when they were doing any sort of parades. He was active, and that kind of instilled that to me. I want to say that part of it is we are starting to get a lot of, and not that this is bad, but we're starting to get a lot of people from out of town, and I think that the town pride is something that it's hard to teach, you know, because you're on the department. The only thing that you're seeing in the town is like all the bad stuff, right? You're seeing all the patients who are calling you 500 times. And you're seeing all the, you know, people mad at you because you didn't put the fire out fast enough, or you didn't get there fast enough. So it is hard for these guys from like out of town to be like, oh, you know, just another person just screaming and yelling at me from a town that I don't live in and that I'm not from. I think that's part of it, but I also think that it is hard for some of the younger guys to separate themselves from this being a job and this being like a passion, right? I would say that my passion is higher for two reasons. Obviously, because of my grandfather being part of it and the tradition of it, and me being from the town. And I can't give that to somebody who's like, hey, I'm from another town, and you know, I'm the first firefighter in my family. So it is hard to teach that, and the only way that you can really do that is if you get just like pride in pride in the station, pride in the department. Like, it's hard to describe, but like that's like the way that you can get an individual is to like do those things. Like social club used to do all these different things and have like people's families involved, and we're getting back there. Like it was a journey. It's a journey, and there's things that are like that they used to do back in the day that our department is now. You know, the firefighters ball.
Yeah.
Like, that was something that they did way back when, and they had. Not only was it a department event, it was a town event.
Right.
Like the firefighters ball was, you had civilians, you know, coming in, showing their support. The police department was a part of it. Do I think that's something that we need to do again? I don't think so, because the public wants something else.
No,
you know, the public wants to see you, you know, as terrible as this sounds, because to want to see the fire department working is a terrible attitude to have, because if we're out there
somebody's having a bad day.
Yeah, right. Somebody's having a bad day. Your house is on fire,
or somebody's hurt.
Yeah, your loved one is dying.
Right.
And that's why we're busy. So when people pass the station and they're like, "Oh, yeah, slow day today," you know, would you guys, you know, just wake up? You know, it's kind of like, and we kind of touched on this with Matt a couple episodes ago, and I kind of stopped it. But to talk about it now, the public sometimes does have this certain mindset, and they don't think before they say the things that they do, and it's not on them. I think it's lack of education of what it is that we actually do. You know, when you put out those numbers, right?
Yeah.
And you're seeing this town used to do, when I started 11 years ago, I think we did 1,500 calls.
Now we're pushing $4,000.
Now we're pushing about 4,500.
4,500.
Yeah,
something
you
like
know, like we are
with the same amount of people.
exactly, and it's a busy time, and yeah, there are times where we don't do a call, right?
Yeah.
But not the whole day.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna be in there for like, maybe you're lucky if you get like a 4 or 5 hour span where you didn't do a call.
And this kind of segues into, I remember at when I graduated the fire academy, and I graduated with another guy who's a close friend of mine on the job that you and I both worked with on the same crew. But we read a poem, and I think I want to say it's called "I Wish You Knew," and honestly, it's like, yeah, that's great. We have a good schedule, you know, we make an okay pay, but I wish you knew how it felt to like miss my daughter's, you know, birthday for the 8th time in a row because I had to work. I wish you knew how it would be to creep through a dark hallway with no light, just reaching out to save somebody as the floor gives away. I wish you knew. It goes through like 12 different things.
Yeah.
Like doing CPR, you know, on someone's loved one as their 50-year-old, you know, spouse or 50-year anniversary spouse looks on with horror. I mean, it's so, yeah, okay, like we have a good schedule, but the cancer rates, the mental health stuff, that, you know, the long nights away from your family.
Yeah.
I mean, the divorce rates are ridiculous, especially among cops. Not as bad firefighters. In fact, there's a lot of firefighters that are cheating on with other firefighters' wives, and there's a whole thing there. But yeah, that's all bad.
Yeah.
But but like I said, you get all that, but I mean, the cancer rates are like ridiculous.
Yeah.
Despite all the great gear. I mean, honestly, and I won't segue into it, but the gear we're even wearing is causing cancer to find it. Never mind protecting you from breathing that crap in. You're getting cancer from just wearing that gear. And then unfortunately, you have the public that doesn't understand that, you know. So it can be disheartening at times, but this is what it is, and it's an education process. But hiding behind the closed doors and not being out there in the public to explain these things doesn't help either.
Yeah.
You know, so I think we're making headway with some of that. And honestly, my favorite times, whether it's a new guy, old guy, doesn't matter. My favorite times are around the kitchen table in the firehouse.
Yeah.
Like literally when we're having coffee, and we love our coffee. I know Andy doesn't, but the rest of us,
All set.
I can't trust a guy who won't drink coffee. But all joking aside, I mean, the crap we hammer out at that table, we solve world hunger. I mean, all kinds of conspiracy theories. But but honestly, all joking aside, like we take care of each other so much just at that table, with diffusing after crappy calls, with making sure we're okay, just a joking around. I mean, that goes such a long ways to us helping each other as well. My wife is on a debriefing team, and she regional debriefing team, and that's also where we've gotten better with the mental health part. I remember when I was brand new, you know, if you did a pediatric cardiac arrest, like they'd say, "Hey, you're good, right?" and tap you on the ass, and you'd be back in the game. That we don't do that anymore. We take care of each other. Like you get pulled off the road so you can talk to someone and make sure you're okay, you know. And I've always been fortunate in my years. I haven't had a lot of crappy calls that I hold in the back of my head. But you're crazy if you don't think you're going to get out of this career with some of them in the back of your head, right? And I've been fortunate. Like, I have a lot less of that in my head than some guys. I just do. I just luck of the draw which calls you're getting sent on. But we do so much better at the mental health stuff than the police, right? Because we're together.
Yeah.
Like, one of the biggest things you can't do, you want to, but you should not do, is if you have a bad call or you're having a rough time, is to isolate. That's the worst thing. Humans are not meant to isolate, right? That's when you get in your own thoughts and bad things happen. Fire guys or firefighters will come back and sit at the table and hash that shit out over a cup of coffee and take care of it. Police, on the other hand, unfortunately, they're told to get back in their cruisers where a lot of time they don't have another partner. So they're sitting around the corner on call again, or waiting for a call, and stewing on it.
Yep.
And that's such a disservice for them, you know? And I don't have a good answer for that, I really don't. Like it's just set up where fire guys are team members like that. And police have a kind of a individual car kind of a response.
Yeah.
But man almighty, even if they could just hang out for half a minute afterwards, two of them just talking, maybe that would help. I don't know. But I know mental health and the first responders, like as much as we have great schedule and everything, guys carry a lot of that shit around. Like they do, you know?
Right.
And it's important. Like I said, I've always been lucky. I'm actually, I've had some mental health stuff in my life because when I adopted my son, at 3 years old, he started showing some mental health stuff, you know? And unfortunately, when you adopt, you don't always know the medical history. You just don't.
Yeah.
And so my son started having some mental health stuff ever since he was at school. So like when I deal with patients on a call and it's for a disruptive kid, it's whatever, it really hits close to home, you know?
Yeah.
I remember not long ago, we had a barricaded kid, and I say kid, he's probably 20, and I took an hour to talk that kid out. The cops are like, no, we're kind of done, we need to make sure he's safe, we're going in. And I'm like, no, why don't we give him a half a minute? And it was just through my background dealing with my son that I was able to have enough patience and caring and understood what I could say to help him out. And it absolutely hit close to home because I dealt with that for 20 years, just basically my son being in and out of residential treatment centers. I come about it from a very honest, I guess, standpoint, you know. I mean, my son had big struggles to the point where it made me okay to see a therapist myself on how I could take care of myself to help my son out. Because he'd see a therapist, I'd see a therapist. We had family therapy. It was crazy, you know. And I'm like, how the hell did I get here with it now that we're doing all this therapy crap? I had people in my house all the time, whether it be family therapy, peer therapy for him. It's crazy. But you love your kid and you do whatever you can to help them, you know.
Yeah.
So, I mean, first responder wellness, getting back to it, is so important. Like, mine wasn't even job related. Like, I used to go to work and I'd love it because I'd get away from my crazy house. I'd be like, for 24 hours, man, I'm here with these guys and it's cool. We're just going to answer calls, we're going to do good things, all good. And when I come home, I'd have to deal with whatever blowback my son had done at school or at the house or whatever. And talk about crazy, you know. And that's where first responders or even people in society will turn to different things like drugs, alcohol, whatever to cope. You know, me, it was always just staying so busy I wouldn't think. So I drove my wife crazy. Like if I was home, I was working all day on the farm with the animals, just running ragged to the point where near exhaustion. Because that was my way of coping by not thinking about my son's stuff and what he was going through, and the fact that, you know, I'd worry if I was doing enough as a dad. I mean, as a parent, you always wonder if you're doing enough anyway, but, so I would go through all that. And it wasn't until recently that I've been able to discover that, yeah, making yourself busy like that, that's no different than hitting the booze or drinking or something like that. You're still doing yourself a disservice. The fact that my coping mechanism was to make myself busy so I didn't have to think about what was going on with my son, and that the fact that I couldn't help him really wasn't making it go away. All it was a game I was playing with myself, you know. And it was very hard to be happy in the moment, even when good things were happening, because I was already busy trying to think about how to get through that day, you know. And all of these things, like I said, it's been a journey for me over 20 years raising my son. Like I said, literally we raised it like it was a residential home, and he'd be in and out of those. I'm very well in tuned, unfortunately, with the mental health part of raising a kid.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of parents doing it right now, and a lot of them are just as frustrated as I was. And a lot of it's not your fault. It's just they don't have good answers for some of this stuff,
Yeah.
right? So so you blaming yourself or feeling like you're a failure sometimes is not going to help. There is resources out there, and I used every one of them. Every one of those resources I used. I mean, I had therapy for him, therapy for the family, everything. And in the end, it really didn't help a lot. My son still ended up in prison for basically hurting my grandson. And it was hard for me to come to terms with that because you feel like a failure as a father. But at some point, you got to give yourself the grace to understand that you did the best you could. And sometimes things are out of your hands, right?
Yeah.
But you still, at the end of the day, have to figure out a way, whether you're dealing with bad calls, a shitty situation at home where your wife is getting divorced from you, whatever. We all have struggles, and we all have to figure a way to deal with that in a way that's productive, so it doesn't become your narrative going forward.
Yeah, and like Bill's saying, it could be all sorts of different things. It doesn't necessarily have to be from the job, and to know that there is services out there for first responders, for police, fire, whatever. And I think if you get to that point, like we said a few episodes ago when I was talking to Matt about mental health, you need to say something. Like, you need to tell somebody, so that that person, if you're not strong enough, or you're not willing to do the person, not willing to be the person to admit that you need the help, maybe that guy that you told is the guy going, hey, so and so, he just told me he's having a rough time. He's like, I really think something's going on. He needs a little extra push, I think. And then you can be the person to go, hey, so-and-so again needs this help, and then we're going to get you there. I know you don't think you need it right now, but I think this would be beneficial if you just sat down, talked with somebody outside of the table. Even though the table solves a lot of world problems, sometimes the table is not enough. And we laugh and we joke about these things. We do have what do they call it? It's dark humor, but what do they call it? Man, I can't remember what it's called. But yeah, so whatever, dark humor, graves humor? Is that something?
Yeah, maybe.
Something like that. So, we do tend to make light of things that are probably more serious, and that does help some people, but there are times where that's not, like I said, the table's not enough.
Chances are is that most people in the field know somebody that really is struggling, right? At some point. I'm not going to name names. I know at least 2 or 3 guys at our station that could really use some help, right? And not because they're not functioning well in their job. They absolutely are professional. They're great at their job. But maybe they could use to talk to somebody. Maybe they could use a program. Like for me, my wife has always been very, very upfront with me and very honest, right? It's almost to the point where sometimes I'd rather her handle me with kid gloves. But she told me about this new program called Struggle Well, and she's got a background, like I said, she does the CISM stuff, does all kinds of classes, whatever, and somehow took this class, and she's like, you really got to go to this class, dude. I think it would help you. And so I ended up buying the book, and the book was excellent. And so I went to the 2-day class, and the 2-day class was pretty good. And it's basically, the start of this program is through boulderpress.com, and I just want to touch on it a little bit because it's a good resource for people out there. I'm hoping that at a future date my wife will come on. She knows more about this stuff than me. I'm an end user of some of this. I don't work for the company, even though I got the shirt on.
It's advertised.
Yeah, honestly, I would, if I had more time, I would become a guide because I believe in it. But what ended up happening is this Boulder Press started because basically guys were coming back from the war, and there was no answer how to help them. Right? They'd come back. like in the book they talk about this guy, one of the founders basically was visiting a guy in the hospital with PTSD, and and the wife was there, and she's like, man, I wish my husband had an arm missing. And the guy's like, why the hell would you say that? And she's like, because then they would know how to help him.
Yeah.
It's a wound I can see. And it's just because of this PTSD stuff that people are stuck in their own head, you know, and they think that the past dictates their future, they can't get out of it. And a lot of that is that same mindset with depression, anxiety, all of that stuff. So I ended up taking the program, reading the book, and it's relevant to, I mean, they tailor it to first responders and military, they really do, because they want to get the nation's heroes, if you will, back in the fight, right? But this program is relevant for anybody. There's nobody out there that hasn't struggled at some point in their life. I don't care if it's with bills. I don't care if it's with the death of a family member. I don't care if it's you broke up with your loved one. It doesn't matter. Like, everybody has problems, right? And I think in this day and age, it's really hard to find ways to cope. I don't think they teach it in school how to cope. I think it's like, hey, just skip it, let's move on, whatever.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's a lot done to teach kids how to cope. And that's why you have these teenagers thinking they have no other option but to kill themselves, or to do these stupid things and take these stupid chances because they don't care about themselves. Likewise, you have first responders that don't see a way out. So the Struggle Well program actually provides that, right? It's just basically a training on how to reframe things so you get to write your story. Like they told us in class, your past is for reference, not residence. So don't let your past dictate tomorrow. Like, you're supposed to live for the today, and don't let that pass. You have the opportunity to rewrite your story. And that meant something to me. And I actually followed through and actually went to a 5-day retreat, if you will, to Texas for Struggle Well. And it was amazing to me, because even through the interview process, I'm like, I told the lady, because this is just for first responders. They have Warrior Path for the Army vets and the Navy vets and all the military guys. And they have Struggle Well Experience, and that's for nurses, paramedics, cops, firefighters, first responders, basically. And so I interviewed for the process because it's free. They send you there. It's all, they'll fly you there, they'll take care of you, and then send you back. But when I interviewed for it, I told the lady on the phone, I'm like, listen, it's not, my struggles are from raising a son with some mental health issues. And that struggle every day. And how I coped making myself busy all the time and not really living each day, and not really, the days would just fly by. It's like almost like, I'm going to probably get shit for it, but it was almost like a prison sentence. I had to try to get my son to be 20 years old and be okay in society. That was the goal after a while. And it sucks, but any parent that's raised a child like the one I had would understand that reference. Most people would be like, yeah, you're an asshole for saying that. But until you walk in my steps where you have a child that's doing all these atrocious things, and I'm not just saying being bad in school, I'm not going to get into it, but really being dangerous in the home. Until you have that, you don't understand. But so I told the lady, I said, my stuff isn't job related. Like, I have a couple bad calls, like whatever. They don't keep me up at night. They don't, And she's like, this program's for you. I'm like, really? She's like, absolutely. When can you get here? And so when I went there and I met my other 11 guys, because they groups of 12, I was interested to see what they were going to have for their struggles, their trauma. And I'm telling you, it was all walks of life. Some guys were like me, some stuff at home. Some guys loss of identity because now they're no longer a cop or firefighter after 40 years and just kind of depressed and don't know what to do with that afterwards. And other guys really had some stuff from childhood and on. And it was amazing. And it was a very good program just to show you that you can write your own story and you can leave some of that crap behind and move forward. Because a lot of guys don't believe that they can move forward or don't see a way forward. This gives people, first responders, military, and even the average wingnut a way forward, you know? And so I came away from Texas with that, with a skill set. And honestly, every day is a little different. Some days are great, like I got my shit together, and other days I'm more in my head still. But it has been enlightening because I have a skill set now to help myself. And as a captain at a fire department, I struggled with whether I was going to tell anybody I was going to this retreat. Because as a leader, and much like the police, this is another reason why, I mean, say if you're a police officer and you come and you say, hey man, I'm really having a hard time with that call last week. I'm not sleeping, I'm not, you know, I might see somebody. Right? They're probably afraid they're going to take their gun or take them off the road. That's not necessarily going to help that guy, you know? He's not saying he's crazy, he's not saying he's going to do something, he's reaching out for help.
Yeah.
Like my struggles with my son never affected the job whatsoever. Like I rocked that shit, you know? I mean, I was very on point with my daily activities at the fire department. In fact, I cherished it because I could just dive into that. But like I said, so as a captain, it was the mental health thing. I'm like, man, do I tell people that I'm going to this program? Do I tell people I see a weekly therapist? I'm like, I wrestled with that at first. But then I thought to myself, I'm like, if you really want to destigmatize some of this stuff, and you really want to take it and make it okay for the guys behind me to get help and to think it's okay for them, then dude, just put it out there, you know? And so like I said, I talk about this stuff with anybody who wants to hear. I've given out that book to a couple people. My wife has given that book out to probably 4 or 5 people. And it's just another resource.
Yeah.
You know? And I mean, like everything, like you can take a medicine and it'll work for one person, it won't work for another. Like some people will journal in the morning and that helps them. Some people, that won't work. They don't like journaling. So you gotta find what works for you, but you have to believe that there's hope and that there's people that can help.
Yeah, for sure.
You know?
Bill, I didn't actually, I didn't think about it that way, but good on you for realizing that, your experiences can help other people, and like you said, take that stigma away from, asking for help. I didn't even think about that, and I would say that you'd be a perfect example of that, where telling somebody and telling your story can give somebody that inspiration to kind of be like, you know what, maybe this will work for me, maybe I do need this. And that is good on you, Bill. And I didn't even think about that until just now when you said it, so that would make perfect sense.
So now, unfortunately, the audio kind of cuts off here for a few minutes, so I'm going to do a little voiceover here. And it was just me asking Bill and thanking Bill for being the guy who kind of gets people to destigmatize and gives them the opportunity to, if they need to ask for help, to ask for help. And we also talked about Bill's wife coming on in a few weeks or so. She's going to talk more about the Struggle Well program that Bill touched on, as well as her experiences with the critical incident stress management team. And we'll talk more about that in a few weeks with her. I asked him the question of, because we were talking about his wife, we were asking the question of how the experience of working in the same department is with them. And Bill basically told us the schedule and the way it works, that they work every other 24, but they have time together. And he just said that it is sometimes tough to talk about the same thing, go through a bad call. You both went through a bad call, but it's also easier for them, as well as having the understanding of each other, both being in the same field. So again, I apologize. The audio kind of got cut off from this. He starts talking about how after you become an empty nester, that you need to kind of learn how to function as a couple instead of devoting the majority of your time to your kids. So once your kids move out, he says that it's like a process of trying to get back into a routine together, learning how to be with each other again without kids being the main focus. And he said that at the time there was a bit of a struggle, and they were able to find ballroom dancing as one of their ways to reconnect. So now we're going to get ourselves back into the original audio. Again, I apologize for the audio being messed up, and let's get back into the original conversation.
I think a lot of married couples go through this, but once your kids leave, you're sitting there. In that 20 years, all you've been doing is being mom and dad. Like honestly, I give people massive credit if they can actually do a date night, or they can actually carve out time for just them.
Yeah.
It's hard. I know.
I
It's nearly impossible, right? So you work this 20 years raising these kids, and your mom and dad, and the kids always come first. Like we're doing this, we're doing that. Like it doesn't matter what you want, right? And then they leave the house, hopefully to college, jobs, relationships, whatever. But they move out, and now you're stuck there looking around the table at each other, and you're like, huh, because in those 20 years you've changed. Like whether you believe it or not, you've changed. And what you were as a couple changed along the way.
Yeah.
Oh, and you're almost left like, now what? And I think there's I don't know the stats, but there's probably some divorce involved in that, because people realize that they've changed through that.
Yeah.
And from my wife and I'm like, we need to figure out how to reconnect a little bit. Not that we were apart, but I wanted to be closer. And she always wanted me to do this stupid ballroom dancing crap. When we got married, I'm like, I'm not doing that. Like, it's not happening, And so I said, no freaking way. And so our 10th anniversary is coming up. And so as a surprise, I went and got her ballroom dancing lessons. And I went to the thing thinking, no freaking way, man. I'm a tough fire guy. I'm not foxtrotting my ass across the floor. It's not happening. But it actually, believe it or not, has been great for us, right? So weekly, we have a 1 hour session where we have to communicate together. We have to actually touch, and it's been great. And honestly, tough fire guy or not, I tease all the time at work that you gotta see the foxtrot I can do, fellas. I don't care, man.
I mean, this guy can dance circles around us, but other than that,
at 48 years old, who the hell am I trying to impress with peer pressure? I don't really give a damn. But it's been good for us, and that was a way for us to reconnect. But I think if you've raised kids, especially, we're in a bit of a war zone sometimes in our household due to just raising a tough child. But to stick together through all that, and at the end to be like, okay, let's take care of ourselves. Because some couples don't do that, and I think they struggle. I've known a couple couples that have broken up when their kids have gotten older,
Yeah.
and whether they're staying, and I don't believe they were just staying together for the kids, even in the beginning. I think just they were different people at the end,
it changed.
and they just didn't want to work hard to kind of figure where they were then. Because marriage it's hard, man. It's work. It's work. It's a give and take, man.
And this is, so back when the first episode, when I had my wife on, we talked about like the 3 stages, right? We talked about the stage of falling in love with your significant other.
Yeah.
And then you have your kids, and then you're now your parents. That's like the second stage. And then the third stage is falling back in love with your spouse.
Yeah.
And I, like Bill said, a very common thing is when your kids are old enough and they leave and they're no longer here and you're an empty nester, like you do need to reconnect with your wife, because like Bill says, it's all about your kids. It's all about your kids until it's not.
Right.
And then you're like, what do I do?
Yeah, and I mean, you have to make that decision as a couple.
Yeah.
You
Exactly.
you either want to make this thing happen, or what, are you going to divorce at 50? And you know,
which I mean, it happens.
oh, it happens, but man almighty, that sucks. And I've seen it happen to people.
Yeah. And I would say ultimately, it's a hard thing to do, and again, props on you for finding that thing, or for your wife finding that thing.
I was gonna say she probably gets a credit. I just went along with it, but honestly, I enjoy it.
Yeah, and that's part. Like you said, it is a connection, and you guys enjoy it, and you've made it a weekly thing, and that's what's important.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll kind of wrap things up here, Bill. Again, thank you for opening up your house to us, and thank you for sharing your stories. I know some of the stuff is not easy to share, but I do appreciate coming on here and bringing awareness to the mental health aspect, as well as telling your story of your journey to get onto the fire department. Again, very appreciative, and I thank you for being on the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me.
And again, you can expect conversations just like this every time you listen to the Gabbin with Goody podcast.